I'm profoundly honored to be selected by WPSR to be the Paul Beeson Award recipient this year. And during my working life, my highest priority was clearly, specifically in the health area. But at a number of points during my life, I felt a nudging, a prod to devote my energies toward the achievement of peace. And this wasn't just after I retired. I know that while we lived in Hong Kong for 18 years, we witnessed a number of uncertain times, such as during the Cultural Revolution in China. We saw evidence of the turmoil and massive toil. We had to keep our suitcases packed because we might have to leave Hong Kong abruptly to avoid whatever chaos would involve Hong Kong. Later, we saw thousands of desperate Vietnamese refugees coming in their small and fragile boats, trying to survive that conflict in which we were involved. Shortly after retirement, I heard Kathy Kelly, and I'm sure that many of you know Kathy Kelly. She spoke about the impact of the sanctions on Iraq, which has already been mentioned this evening. But the impact particularly on Iraq's children. And I won't go into detail, but her comments pushed me, gave me a good shove to narrow my focus to the peace issue. And these days I'm certainly uncertain whether the Bush administration is going to launch an aerial attack on Iran. And I feel we must all do whatever we can to assure that this does not happen. It would be catastrophic. One of the latest things that I have heard is in the Huffington Post. They said the U.S. is selling Israel 1,000 satellite-guided missiles that could be used against Iran. In May this year, Dave Hall sent an email, and I suspect that many of you received that email. It was about a book by James Douglas, and the book is JFK and the Unspeakable: Why He Died and Why It Matters. That's a book that has made a great impression on me. I've only gotten about one-third of the way through it. But James Douglas spent 13 years in researching the data behind JFK's assassination. He was the beneficiary of numerous unclassified documents which had not previously been available. He interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people relative to JFK's assassination. I have, in the last couple of months, I have mentioned this book to a number of people, and oftentimes I would get the response, well, this is another conspiracy theory, isn't it? And then I heard Steve Scher, and I like Steve Scher in general, but he also took a very incredulous position relative to Jim Douglas's works. But I would urge, whenever you have time, if you have time, to look into this book by Jim Douglas, published by Orbis this year, 2008. I need to acknowledge, and I have a very short period of time, I want to acknowledge, though, credit for this Beeson Award to several organizations, several groups that I'm active in. One certainly, which Anne mentioned, is the Interfaith Network of Concern for the People of Iraq. Another one is United Nations Association Seattle, and yet a third is the Network Opposing War with Iran. And certainly I feel they are the ones that deserve the credit for this. Further, I want to mention my good wife Betty, who is sitting here, for sticking with me regardless of wherever it was that I wanted to go around the world, whatever country or in Africa or wherever. And she kind of followed me around. We celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary next year. I'd like to close with a couple of quotes. The first is by Martin Luther King at his 1967 Riverside Church address. We're called to speak for the weak, the voiceless, for victims of our nation and for those it calls enemy. For no document from human hands can make these humans any less our brothers. And finally, from the 19th century Swiss philosopher, his name is Henry Amiel, he said, life is short, and we do not have much time to gladden the hearts of those who travel with us. So be swift to love and make haste to be kind. Thanks to WPSR for all you do.